Welcome to this demo on how to get started with Influence Desktop. In this demo, we're going to go over how to create a new project in the application and how to get started by adding some steps to your project and importing some data. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. By this point, I will assume that you have already installed the application and configured your Python environment, so you should be set to go. There is no need at this point in the software lifecycle for signing in or anything of that nature, so you should be good to go ahead and start to create some projects. So when you open up the application for the first time, you will see something like this. You will not, of course, see any recent projects on the start page, but those will show up as you conduct your work. So guiding yourself around the application, on the left-hand side, there's this project management pane, allows you to open and close projects, access the settings for the application, which you can do here, as well as open up a pop-up library of the tools that are available for you to work with inside of the application, but we'll get to that later. This is one of the areas in which you can use these quick tiles to access the asset galleries inside of the application. So you have data sets, visuals, and models inside of your application, or inside of your project, I should say. And then some quick tiles down here to go ahead and run your project, add some commonly used tools to your workflow, or jumpstart into a data prep pipeline. And all the way down at the bottom, there's a virtual assistant to help you get started and answer some of your questions. But I won't bother with that for now because this is a demo. On the right-hand side of the application is your workflow. This is the canvas on which you will add the steps for your pipelines. Right now it's blank. Right now I can't add anything to here because we do not currently have an open project. At the top is the application ribbon. Right now, because there's no project open, most of the tabs are grayed out and unavailable to us. When we open up a project, we'll then be able to use these tabs to add tools to the workflow. So we will go ahead next and start by creating a new project. So there are a couple ways to do this. You can go to the ribbon and you can hit new, or you can click new here from the start page. So I'll do this, and it's going to prompt me for project name. So I will say demo 1, and I will say create. Ta-da, our project is created. And you can see here that now these ribbon bars have become available to us, and this is another place to access the tools, and they're grouped here by tool type. So you can see that we start with data sources, and it kind of follows the pipeline development lifecycle here. Data sources, where you use these tools to import data and models into your pipeline. You can use these transform tools to conduct ETL or manipulate your data. You can use the analyze tools to conduct statistics. This is where you also train machine learning models and apply machine learning models if you're interested in doing that. Text and language tools for text processing, manipulating text, changing the case, character count, text search, scrubbing and redacting, as well as some more sophisticated text analysis features like sentiment analysis, translation language detection, tokenization, lemmatization, and text classification. Some visualizations, not a whole lot here yet, still building out a lot of these features. Some output tools, pretty basic. Most of what we're going to be working with here, most of the value in the tool, we feel is the development and training of machine learning models without using code. So there is some ability to create ETL pipelines, and we may add more if that is requested, and certainly can add more of those types of tools. But right now, most of the write back is writing out to files and exporting your trained model assets for use in your code or delivery to production. So some basic workflow controls, execute your workflow, reset all of your steps. And here on this tab is your favorites area. When you hover over a tool here, you'll see that the little fleur shows indicating that this can be picked up. I'll demonstrate that later. And you can hover over the tooltip to see a better description of what this tool does. And there's also a star here that you can click to add or remove from the favorites area. And if you're looking at the regular data source tab here, for example, you can see that this Excel tool is added to favorites. I can change that. I can add it back. And then finally, view. This is just like this here. It's just another way of accessing your asset gallery. So there we go. So we have a project started. We've gave it the name of Demo 1. You can see up here at the top, it indicates that we're inside of project Demo 1. So let's go ahead and let's pull some data into this project. I happen to have a data set queued up inside a CSV file. So we'll add our first step to our workflow. So to add a step to a workflow, there's a few ways. You can right click on the tool and you can click on Add to Workflow. That will add the step to the workflow over here. But I'm going to remove it by right clicking, saying delete, and confirming. And I'm going to drag it over here and drop it onto the canvas. That's the second way of adding tools to the workflow. So you can see here we have this block representing our tool or step, referred to as blocks within the application. A few things we can do. You can use these arrows to move it up and down inside the pipeline once it's dropped on. You also do have the ability, if I just add a few more here, or maybe one more is good enough. When you're initially dropping it on, you can drop it anywhere in the pipeline. So that's how you make sure you get it in the right place. And you can use the arrows to move it up and down. You only need one, so I'll get rid of this again. You can also add tags, and these tags will help you to search for tools in your pipeline if it gets excessively long. So you can add tags. You can search the workflow by name, but if you add tags, it will also search the tags when you're searching here. And then you can also add comments to your block. So I have here, I can say first project. And you will add this comment here under an anonymous username, but there you go. And you can see it's added here as well. There's one comment on this block, and if I open it up, ta-da, there it is, and it's available to other people to keep track of what you've done. You can edit or delete comments or copy the text within the comments here if you need to. By right-clicking, you can access the context menu for each block. So configure, this is important, we'll get to, execute the block. You can run everything that's above the workflow in this block. You can move it to the top or bottom. You can enable or disable. Properties and description is a pane that shows you some of the additional properties of the block. If it's a block that has applicable metrics, they will be here. And you can also add a more detailed description. So I'll change this to say import our first data set from our directory. And save. And that will now be saved as a description of this block. Fantastic. So without further ado, let's go ahead and we'll configure this. So there's two ways to open up this block. One way, well, actually, I'll demonstrate rename while we're here and we're looking through this. So there's a few other things we can do. We can get to this later. To rename a block, you can double click here on the name and you can just say import dset1. Or you can also right click, go to more and hit rename from here as well. Fantastic. So to open the what we call the configure pane, to configure your block, one way is to right click and click configure. The other way is to double click on the icon. So I'll do that. It's a little faster. You can see that this carries our comments over here, so you can easily see them, or if you've saved something like a directory path or something in a comment for referring to later, you can access that here. And then there's all of the fields that you'll need to fill out in order to make this a block that can be executed to take the action that's intended to do. So we're going to import some data. We'll give it a table name. I happen to know that this data set is named diabetes, so we'll keep it, and I'll name the table that will be added to our data set registry as diabetes. I will click on browse to find the file path to our CSV file. It is on the desktop. There it is. I happen to know that the first row of this data set does contain the headers, so we're good to go. And I'll click Save. On the block, you can see that the red bar has now changed to yellow. That means that you've filled out the appropriate fields necessary for this block to attempt an execution. That does not mean that this block will 100% complete successfully. I could have entered in a file path for which there was no applicable file. It could be a file that's not formatted as a CSV and it might fail. So there's a number of reasons why this may not work, but at least we know that it is ready to go. So now that it's here, what we'll do is I'll right click on it and I'll say execute. It looks like it works. We see a green line, we have no errors. So let's check it out. I'll go to view, I'll say data, and it will pop up our data pane here, and I can see that this actually did in fact import our data set. So this is just a set of classification data. Some folks who have worked with machine learning for a while may recognize this data set: list of patients, some attributes about that patient, numeric attributes, and then the classification, a binary classification whether or not this individual is diabetic. So just before we wrap this up, there's a few other things you can do here from the data view. You can choose to rename the table. This will also change the table name attribute on the block that imported or created this table, so bear that in mind. I can click on this to flip back to the configure pane for the block that created this table. I can duplicate this table within the asset registry, the dataset registry, and this will also create a duplicate of the block that generated it, because obviously you need to, if you are generating a table with a step in your pipeline, you need another step to generate the pipeline again. And finally, if you click here on this, you can see some additional properties about the table. Some of it may be useful. Generates the table statistics here, so you can see for each column the stats on the count, min, median, max mode, the percentiles, etc. You can scroll across to here and see that for all the columns as applicable, as well as the column count, the record count, and if there are any columns with blanks, it'll easily search that up for you so you'll know beforehand if you'll need to fill in blanks or do data validation as part of your ETL. So I'll close that there. I'll close out of here. And then the last thing we need to do is we actually need to save our project. You may have noticed that I created a project, but I didn't tell it where to save. And that means that this project isn't technically saved yet. So I'm just going to go head over to File. I'm going to say Save. Go to my desktop and just save it as Project 1. And we are good. And then if I go back to the start page, you will see that this is in our most recent list of projects. So if I need this to get it back, when I reopen, it's right there and I can jump right back into my work. But this has been a demonstration of how to get started with Influence Desktop. Hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned as I add more demos for future features or new project ideas of how to make use of this tool. Thank you very much and enjoy your day.